Welcome to my new series called Talk Tech with TIFF, where I am sitting down with industry professionals to hear about their career journeys and current roles. I created this series to hear from people who are established in the tech industry so that we can all learn what these individuals do in their day-to-day jobs and the type of opportunities that are out there. Okay, let's get started. Today, I'm sitting down with Martin Zhang, who is currently a product designer at Nurse Simple. Hi, Martin.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Thank
Great
you
day.
for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, when I was reading about you from your bio and speaking to some mutual friends, I was so excited to sit down and just pick your brain because you have such a great and really interesting journey. Mm-hmm. So on that note, I'd love to hear more about, let's start with your current position at Nurse Simple.
Yeah, okay. So I'm a product designer for Nurse Simple. It's a startup that was founded in Toronto, I think around like 2 years ago. And what we do is essentially nurse triage. So as we all know, I guess being in the Canadian healthcare system, like there's a lot of like wait times and lead times when it comes to hospitals and stuff like that. So what we're trying to do is bring part of that online, and it's what we like to call nurse triage, right? Being able to help nurses and customers, or I guess patients, be able to like flow within the system a little bit better as opposed to just waiting around, right? So having a lot of medical care information being down and documented so that it would just easily get transferred over as opposed to just doing it over and over again. And well, that's like our core business and I guess the core product stuff that I haven't really been touching, because right now what we've been working on is with in partnership with DynaCare, we're doing a lot of the outbound and inbound testing for for travelers, who are entering and exiting the country for COVID-19. So for example, if you're like travel outside to the States or like travel back into Canada into the States, you'd be able to book a test and make sure that you have, PCR tests to get in and out of the country fine. I guess in terms of my current role right now, it's about just designing that and making sure that people who are using the system can actually use it, right? Because this is not like a target audience of people who are necessarily very knowledgeable about how tech works, right? Like these are everyone. We're talking about old people, like very young people. Everyone needs a PCR test. There's no like, oh, we have a very targeted market. We know we can figure out what they want, who they are, and or how they use sites. So that design is been a lot about like what I've been focusing on, right? Just being, how do I make a design that can translate and is understood by literally anybody that can go and take a look at it. So but that's a little bit about, what I'm doing. There's a lot of other side projects as well that we're doing. Some are in partnership with new companies such as Citizen Care Health. Like they're more outbound focused, like, cause if you've been reading the news, I guess there's been like a huge backlog of, COVID tests and stuff like that. So we've been able to we're trying to bring that part online as well to solve that. So yeah, pretty busy at work, so I'm trying to say.
Yeah, exactly. And as a product designer, so many product designers have a very specific problem they're trying to solve or audience they are targeting. So the fact that you are designing essentially for the general public, like everyone, like you said, no matter what age they are or how tech savvy they are, that has to be very challenging.
Oh, no, it definitely is challenging because your first instinct is to go online and maybe just take a look and see what other people are doing. Maybe Facebook or how does Facebook have their design for the dashboard, or something like Spotify or Shopify, right? These general things, but you still know that there is a targeted customer there. So for me, it's about limiting actually the artistic side of the design, right? Removing as much of that flair as possible that maybe other companies would integrate to part of branding, right? But that really isn't part of the goal of the designs that we're taking.
Yeah.
The goal is to just narrow it down to what is the most important aspects of this flow, and just cut out all the bullshit that could be there.
Yeah, I like that. Wow, that's really interesting.
Thank you.
So when we were talking prior to starting this, you mentioned that your path wasn't always towards product design. So could you tell me a little bit about your path?
Yeah. So I started off within, in business school right now. I'm at Queen's University for the Smith School of Business. And it was kind of weird, I guess, because when I was in the school, I was looking around and like, so I was trying to think like, what are the possible paths I could be taking right now, right? Like most of them are, I guess, slightly obvious. They're like, finance, marketing, and accounting, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
But it was quite odd because like I didn't really like think I enjoyed any of them, even though I never really had experience in it, right?
Yeah.
But it was just something that like never really drove me, and it was slightly odd because I had to, like, I guess, well, let me say this actually. I had a really good opportunity to try something that was outside of the scope of what business school teaches you. And that's sort of starting my own new projects and working on startups while I was in school to like gain a bit more, I guess, insight into like what tech really was. Because I was always interested in tech.
Yeah.
And this ties into sort of the hackathon stuff that maybe we can touch upon in a later bit.
Yeah, I'd love to.
And they're like, well, like, as I was in school, like I had still a lot of free time to like sort of mess around and stuff like that. And yeah, I think, wait, sorry, what was the question again? I might have.
No, it's totally fine. No, you're on the right track. I was just wondering how your path, like how.
Oh, yeah.
Your journey into where you are now.
Yeah, of course. Sorry about that.
No.
Basically, yeah, as I guess as I was saying, so like it was a lot about project-based work, right? So it was back then, me and my my then co-founder, we started taking a look at this company that he started back in around 2015, 2016 called, back at the time, Ivy Apps. And this was a company that was funded by the Ontario government at the time. They had the program called Summer Company, which was to encourage like entrepreneurship and within younger students, right? So what he had done back then was like use that money to fund a website for getting people, I guess, asking, like literally just approaching alumni and asking, hey, can I get your school applications for universities? And just putting it online so that students would be able to see it. So I guess I didn't really explain the idea, but yeah, that's really what it is. At the core, it's just a website or blog that has a list of successful applications to top universities within Canada, the States, and like all across the world, really, and just being able to like make it online and make it accessible, right?
Wow.
But that was something that that was the original idea, right?
Okay.
And we had taken a look at that, and we saw like it was an opportunity because we had gained a lot of passive SEO just because people were like, around application season, especially, I remember this pretty fondly that I would be Googling like, like successful applications to, Queen's University, to like Harvard and just all these random universities, right? So there's a lot of passive interest into what into like what our blog offered, right? Just students offhandedly Googling it. And that was an opportunity that we saw. And being able to transition and move towards like, this may be a good idea. That what if we expanded it, and what if we like took a look at it, right? And the logical next step that we had taken with that was definitely we should try and offer some sort of mentorship thing, right? Because that's the next step. You as a student have read how these students or these people are like, or their applications, like who these people are. But now the next step is like, why don't I meet them? And maybe they can help me, right? Like it's about finding the person who has a very similar background, similar interests as you, and like being able to like fine tune that for a university audience. But it's also like, other stuff too. Like I want to get to know like, what is your path? How did you get here, right?
Yeah,
so it's like, it's all about like, it's more about the mentorship network. So that's when we went and co-founded Squired.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's the company that we're working on and we worked on at the time, I guess. And it reached about 100,000 students at one point. It was very cool to see that.
Cool.
Yeah. Like being able to work on a project that actually gained like a lot of traction, like a lot of interest. And also like seeing people like meet new people and like these mentors meeting other mentors meeting students also meeting other students. It was like, it was like a network.
Yeah.
That was really, it was really interesting. It wasn't like a social media network. It was just like a network of people who are like, we're interested.
Yeah.
That's
like a community.
Cool. Exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
And being able to found that community was one of the most like almost like inspiring things. Is like knowing that like what I've like the hard work that I guess I've been putting into it. It's like, yes, like
you can see it.
Exactly. It translates.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people who are watching this want to either start their own business or are working towards becoming an entrepreneur or startup. And as someone who's done it so well, like yourself, reaching over 100,000 students, what is some advice or insight looking back that you maybe wish you had or that you gained through that process?
Well, I will say this. Okay, I guess I really have 3 big points on this. The first big point is like, it is very, very much more stressful than people like to believe it is. Like, I know there is a culture for entrepreneurship and startup online where it's like, the grind, never stop hustling, et cetera, et cetera. But the reality is that like, I love grinding. I love doing work. And as well as most people love doing like something that they love, right? But waking up every single day, stressing out and being like, I needed work now, right? All constantly under stress, especially because during that semester, I took a year off school as well. Like I took a gap year to focus on this startup and actually, like try to advance it forward. Like, try to do many things all the things at the same time, right? Like stuff that I had no experience on. Like, how do we like go about like, is right now the time to be raising money, or right now is it the time to be moving over technologies, right? Because our site was based on WordPress, which is sort of notoriously slow, as I guess many people would know, and like especially with all the plugins that we used, right? So that was another battle that we had, and there was also like, how do we get marketing? How do we manage all these mentors, right? And it was just us two. We had a third guy. I guess I should probably say their names actually. My co-founder's name is Alex Thorburn-Windsor. Okay, great guy. And there is and the other guy is Jan Soin. Like these two, we're our co-founders. That's so great. But back to I guess the story. It's not as glamorous as it is portrayed, I believe, in media. Yeah. I think that, like it's easy for people to go out and say, just do your startup, just do it, just do it. Like there's a catchy slogan. Yeah. But then there's actually doing it and actually experiencing it yourself. It's like, you got to understand the realities of it. Yes. Like this is going to take a lot of sacrifice. I sacrificed a lot of friendships, just being able to like not keep up or maintain my social hygiene because I was just so busy with like constant. This, and it was constantly, I would be hanging out with people. I'd be like, shit, I need to like go back now. I have to do this. Right. And it's like, no, well then, and then there's also the other thing where it's like, I can be like here, but I don't know, I can be working on this, but I don't know if it's actually going to be like long-term successful. Right. Because what is the goal of this? Like we've reached like, we've reached this point where we're helping people, but like if we want to scale, like that involves like so much more manpower, stuff that we just weren't experienced with, right? Exactly. And when you're in that budding stage, you necessarily can't bring on more people because you're just you're still in that budding stage. So you have to do everything, master of all trades or whatever it is. And in turn, you're working 24/7, but then the other side is, what is this sacrifice for? Is it going to be worth it in the end, or where is this going to go? That is a lot. And that's tied into my like second big point on this, right? Is that like, it's just not to like be realistic about like what is in front of you. Like don't be obsessed with like the flares of being an entrepreneurship. Like don't be obsessed, like don't be distracted by stuff like, oh, I want to build like the best team, the biggest team ever, right? Oh, I don't want to be, or don't get distracted by like I need to be wearing like, or I need to be posting online on my stories, like telling people that I'm grinding, right? It's like you have to be realistic and know that this isn't going to be easy, and you shouldn't be focused on all the other like bullshitty stuff that is mostly for appearances, and you should be optimal. I guess this is the biggest point actually, is that you should find the optimal solution for literally everything you do, even if it's not fancy, if it's not nice, right? I didn't like to use WordPress, but like that was the solution that we had to use because we needed to get an MVP out, right? Validate that there was demand for this. We could have waited for, we could have done a dev cycle, done months of this, but then for what, right? I know. It's so true. If there's no one that enjoy it or no one's going to use it, it's just a waste of time, right? So it's like you have to always be optimized and like know when to to know when or how much time you have to be doing for everything, right? So that's another thing. Exactly. You can't wait until the perfect moment or perfect tool comes along. You just need to keep on iterating. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It is like a very iterative process, right? Yes. And it was especially like, it sucked for me because I feel like I'm kind of a perfectionist type of guy. Really, especially, that's kind of why I'm a designer as well. But, being a perfectionist, it's like really like kind of shitty because you have to hold back the horses and be
Yes.
like, oh, we need to do this now, launch it now, even if it's not in a perfect state.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Switching back a little bit into product design.
Yeah.
And speaking of being a perfectionist or not holding back, a lot of people who are not product designers but maybe want to become one, I get asked this quite often. So I'm just curious to hear your take on it as a product designer.
Yeah.
They ask, if I want to become a product designer, do I need to know how to code? Do I need to be very technical? What is your experience and take or advice on that?
Yeah. So this is what I'll say. I think that it is a yes and no thing for being technical and knowing how to code. And I'll start off with a yes, because you need to, I guess at the end of the day, what you're doing as a designer is that you're designing for a developer, right? You're designing for code.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of understand what you're building, right? It's easy to go, or not, I wouldn't say easy, but it's, when I definitely was starting out, what I would do is I would just go and, find some inspiration online and then recreate the rectangles and stuff like that. At that time, I didn't understand the, component structures. I didn't understand reusability, extensibility, right? Within your design, being able to minimize the amount of work for the developer as a designer, right? And that interaction between designer and developer only came to me when I worked when I'm working full time for my own work experience, right? Because deploying your own designs and just knowing what to do is just different from being able to communicate that within your design documents to something else. So that's something that it's I would consider a very technical thing. And obviously I would say that, having some general understanding of how basic front-end development would work, such as HTML, CSS, just understanding the nature, how do I recreate it? The div stuff, H1 tag, stuff like that. That stuff is all, I think it is definitely important to understand, but also not, you don't need to be a full-time developer, right?
Yes.
It's just being able to understand the connection between the two.
Exactly.
Yeah. So but I guess while I'm saying that, I would also say that it is not it is very technical, but there are aspects that are much more nuanced.
Yeah.
And, this is more of the artistic side of being a designer, because I've been talking a lot about the practicality of stuff. At the end of the day, you have to understand that design is something that is not set in stone. There's not one right way to approach it, because design will obviously change based on context and stuff like that, right? So, this is something that my mentor and teacher back in the day, Mr. Batitas, we used to call him Mr. Big Tito, or D, I guess. So what D told me is true. You need to be making sure that whatever you are doing, actually makes sense within your context. And that comes from a lot more experience.
It does.
Yeah. It is unfortunately not as simple, elegant, or seamless as what it sort of seems online, but But that's essentially what my take is. There's a very technical aspect to it, but then there's also that nuance, which is based so much more on context.
For sure.
Yeah.
And like yourself, someone who is going to university and completing it, but not for necessarily a coding specific role, how did you, based on your answer of there is some technical, for someone who's looking to get into product design, but like yourself, didn't come from a coding background, is that something you just picked up as you went along and taught yourself?
Okay, so this is actually something this is something very important, I guess, within my career development, is that coding seems like such a inaccessible, very far out concept, right? What am I looking at? You're literally looking at lines of just words on a page, right? It doesn't mean anything.
Language.
Exactly, it's its own language, right? Yeah. So, my approach, and what I believe is one of the better approaches, is instead of just approaching it from a traditional school module breakdown thing, I think that people should learn how to code by just doing their own projects and by actually actively going out and solving your own problem, right?
Yes.
I have, I guess something that what I can point towards an experience I had recently is something I've been working with a company called Thinking Cap, right, run by my friend Saeed. Shout out to that guy, by the way. He is what my experience with that is being able to hold on, sorry.
No, take your time.
Have a design that we had together and figuring out okay, so like there is this, like I have this design, this template, and my developer friend, Saeed, has been able to build this out. But then there are some certain aspects of it that are like kind of wrong and kind of off. Like, oh, there's a bit too much spacing here, or there's a bit too much, like this text is too high. Then it would be like, I would Google, how do I change that? Or, and then that's how you learn it, right? So this is more like the front end markup stuff. But then it also ties back into like another experience I had when it came to more like logic stuff, right? So this is for another project with another friend of mine, I guess. This is for a project called Habitat.
Okay.
And it's run by my friend Todd. Like what we were trying to do is, or I guess what the project was trying to optimize, or not optimize, create a co-living workspace platform that allows like people to like book co-living spaces online and being able to like move that between places, right? So that's the overall problem, right? And then there's certain aspects that are very like, how do I make sure that this particular page, or not page, this this house is going to be able to like show up in like this place when I need it to, right? Like that, then you're delving a little bit into JavaScript. Then you start looking to that, right? I know I sort of rambled on there for like quite a bit when it comes to this, but like,
no, it's so important. It is.
Back to the original point though. Like it's about being able to know what the problem is, and honestly knowing what to Google.
It's true.
Yeah.
Oh, Googling is a skill in itself.
Yeah.
And it's something that you learned.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Like I've definitely tried to take one of those boot camps and coding and stuff like that. Yeah. Like I would say they're definitely useful for like, maybe recognizing like, oh, like that's the syntax there or something, right? But it's not quite like, it doesn't translate that into like real learning in my opinion, because I honestly just spaced out a lot of the time. But when I was actively learning is always when I'm like trying to identify a problem that's in front of me and being like, okay, this is something that is not a unique problem. Number one, that's something important to remember. Yeah. This is definitely something that someone else has like asked a question online. So I just got to find that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, I
that's
totally agree. Yeah. We're not the first. Usually 9 times out of 10, you're not the first to come across this problem.
Yeah. Exactly.
Or maybe even almost 10 out of 10. I don't want to say that, but almost.
Yeah. I mean, coding is pretty much like one of the most documented things ever, right? Like you're always going to be able to find like someone else who has a similar problem to you, and they're going to help you out, right? So that's what matters. Like just remember that there are resources online, and just just focus on that. But I
agree. Martin, I have one question, last question for you. Well, I have tons more, but I won't keep you forever.
Thank you.
My last question, if you could sum up in a few sentences, what advice would you give to your younger self? And I'm putting you on the spot here.
That's a very good question. Because, okay, I guess I'll say this. Like, one of the very original sort of, I guess, mantras that me and my friends usually had before was that we used to like roast coders. Okay. And, it's pretty funny because I'm telling you this as, you're a developer. But what we used to say is, coders are easy to come by. Yeah. Visionaries are 1 in a million, right? Oh. It's like, I can see the cringe in your face right now. But what I'm trying to say is that mentality and approach to just like, anything really.
It's true. It is true.
I actually don't agree. I think it's false.
Really?
Yes, because I think that you can't just say, oh, coders are like, they're bad. Visionaries are cool.
I agree.
Right?
I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was something that like it discouraged me from like learning aspects of coding, because it was like, like this, like more about like the flex of like just being like like a designer or stuff like that. Right. Yeah. And that's something, I understand this like a kind of a niche thing. It's not like everyone has this idea. Right. But it's about like being both like practical and also like being able to apply the ideas. And this is something that I should have told myself a lot earlier. It's just like, I want to be a guy who like works on my own projects. Yeah. But that also involves me being able to like learn, be open to learning.
Yes.
I guess.
I totally agree. I completely agree. And I think it comes back to what you used to say about coders and versus visionaries. Yeah. I think although like you said, it's not necessarily the truth. One thing I do agree about that is with any role, not just coding, any role, you can either just do your job and do what you're told, and that's fine if that's what you want. But with any role, you can also become a visionary and take it and continue to learn and continue to grow and really hone in on it and be open.
And that's like a really good point towards like entrepreneurship as well, right? Is that if you're an entrepreneur, you don't need to be just always like starting your own project or your own thing, right? There's an entrepreneurial like mindset, like being able to think a bit more entrepreneurial. I think that's what really being a problem solving oriented or just curious person really looks like, right?
That's so true.
Yeah.
I never thought of it like that.
That's how
that's
how I was
really
thinking.
cool. Martin, it was so amazing talking to you. Thank you for taking time to share all your insight and your honestly wisdom. Like I feel like I've learned a lot from this.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Martin.
This has been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes. All right.
Amazing.